Tango 1 at the top. We are at pop-up vehicle. 10-4, Tango 1. You have control. Tango 1 copy. Stand by. Stand by.
Integrity, passion, resilience. That's what this place was built on. That's what our community is founded on. Don't act like the example, just be the example. This is the home of the greatest fitness community in the world. We're trying to create strong, able bodies, resilient to injury with a gas tank to get shit done. If there's one thing from this podcast, it's about taking immediate action, find the problem, fix the problem. This is your opportunity. It's either a hell yes or a fuck no. It's that simple. You're ruining the Tango 1 podcast. Now is the time to take action. Now's the time to do more and be more.
What you want, right?
I won't be cutting anything. No, I just find if I start the podcast after we chit chat, it's like sometimes the best stuff is like I'm like, oh man, well, then you can't recreate it. It's just fake.
Yeah, you don't want to miss any of those clips, but yeah, no, I was curious about the move.
Oh man, the move.
It's not
was
easy moving all that stuff.
Oh, I wish everything. We're gonna talk about. There's Isaac Lewis on here with me today from Ancore Training Systems, and I wish everything was like an Ancore where I could just like take this little bundle of joy, but it was not like that. It was absolutely
40 a bumper
awful,
plate. 45 bumper plate weighs 45. So
yeah, and
there's nothing we're gonna change about that.
The stuff with the handles. 100-pound dumbbells, like that was all like sucked, but not great, but manageable. The flooring, 120 pounds per sheet, and it's like limp, like as like, I don't know, what can you appropriately explain limp as? But limp as the worst thing ever, but like
it's not easy to lug around, right? It's so
man.
awkward and bulky, and that's what makes
I used up all my favors pretty much. Like I asked every friend, and they were all so helpful. And then it's like you get all the big stuff. We're moved in here and this place is operating, but I still have this other building with like stuff, leftovers and like extra stuff that I'm trying to sell. And you're like, oh, I can handle this myself. Like I feel like 57 trips later, I'm finally got everything out of there. My home garage is jammed. My C-can storage is jammed. And I have a trailer like a Sheeny man parked in my driveway right now with an ugly tarp over it. Oh, it's been long. It's been good. And the new place is amazing. Like I can't wait till you get back home.
That'll be awesome. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to checking it out. That's and it's right nearby, right? Like you said, it was right kind of across the way.
Yeah, block and a half, like some stuff.
And it's like new, right? Like you told me it was new.
The building is old, very old, but the it was absolutely brought down to a shell. Like to the floor I'm standing on is brand new. So everything inside the walls is brand new.
Sweet. Well, I look forward to the tour. I
can't wait. So welcome everybody to Tango 1 Podcast. Your host, Tony Smith, as usual. And I've got my guy from Windsor, Ontario, now living out in Boston. Isaac Lewis, he is the, I don't know, CEO, what do you call you, of Ancore Training Systems?
Co-founder. I'll usually just run it as co-founder, but
Tony,
thanks for having me on.
I appreciate having you on, man. And if you guys have not looked up his stuff, like, it's probably if you're listening to this and you're not familiar, you haven't been to the garage gym and seen the one that we have here or been anywhere else or seen them all over your Instagram. You guys kill it on like your maybe I guess I don't know that. Maybe it's because I'm a target audience that I get everything, but like I feel like I knew about your stuff way before I ever met you because it's an awesome product.
That's sweet. Well, that's what's cool is that you knew about our stuff before we had met, kind of that chance encounter there out in Phoenix, but I would have had no idea, especially with the Windsor connection. But usually I'll like just to give the background for obviously anyone else, like it's a compact version of a cable machine is what we build. So imagine this weight plate, pulley, selectorized machines, similar to what you can do on one of those machines, but fits in your hands. And as you were saying before about, moving them from one facility to the next, the product only weighs a max of, like 9 pounds physically, but provides way more resistance. And I know you've got them just, mounted up on the racks there, but excited to hear obviously how they've been working at the garage gym. But yeah, it's meant to be a simple cable solution that takes up no space, super light, super portable, and that's what's really cool about it. But Yeah, no, this would be great. Looking forward to it. And
Yeah, man. What is it like? Maybe pop out the Instagram or like the website, just so people can. Because I feel like if I was listening to this podcast right now, I'd want to like pull it up.
yeah.
On our YouTube, we'll my buddy will put it up for you. But like, what's the website that we're looking for, or Instagram?
So anchortraining.com, but anchor is spelled ANCORE training. So ANCORE training.com. That's the website. And then our Instagram is simple. It's the same as the website domain. So at Anchor Training, ANCORE training. And that's pretty much, the majority of where people are going to come across and engage us is really the website. Obviously that's where, all of the different products are listed and different kind of the features and FAQs and videos. And then Instagram is probably just like, really an incredible resource to just see, because we repost so much of what our customers are simply sharing on their own Instagrams. They're sending to us videos of like, check out, here's, how I've been using it with my clients or my athletes, or, with these patients in a rehab setting. And so it's just a great, because it kind of allows us to like feed that back to the rest of like the audience and followers of like, hey, like it is a versatile cable unit. So with a cable machine, you can do essentially like an endless amount of exercises, especially when on our cable, it's a universal carabiner. So you put any attachment on there you want from, obviously they come with handles, but you can do the tricep ropes, straight bars, ankle strap, waist strap, like you name it. People have, attached and, made their own attachments as well, but
Man, like,
just gives you an endless amount. So like you kind of get an inspiration from, hey, look what this customer's doing. And someone's like, oh, I never thought of that. And it kind of helps with that, continuing education around just getting more value out of the product.
you know what? I couldn't agree more. So like, first of all, Isaac did not pay to be on here. Anchor didn't pay to be on here. Like this is like, but I have people on here that I think have great stories, which we'll get into because I think the story about this thing is awesome, and even the story about how you and I met is
Yeah.
pretty crazy. But like, as far as like, so one, we downsized. This gym is smaller by about 1,000 square feet, and kind of a rule of thumb. You sat in on those courses because you were in the back selling your product, right, or showing off your product, and every square foot of a small gym in a small business needs to make you money, right? And that means like it's got to be used efficiently. So a cable machine, which is, I mean, if you're gonna go from like bro science, one of the like my favorite thing in a regular gym was the cable machine. I love it. Like the thing I miss the most about the police department is my access to that cable machine. Right. But getting it into my gym is literally impossible. So cable machine or like a lat pull down or like one of those simple towers, even they take up quite a bit of room and are frankly pretty expensive, like a quality one. So like those are two of the best things that are eliminated by your, what would I say? It's like shoebox size piece of equipment that latches right in onto my squat rig or really any squat rack that anybody could have, because it is very like those like new like that new system you have with the spiral, the easy screw on is amazing. Like that goes on so quick and so easy. We invested in this to replace it for like, we do group training. Is it practical for group training? Absolutely. If you'd be it'd be quite an investment to get it for 20 people, but for the 2 or 4 people in a small group or a one-on-one training, this thing is priceless. And we're using it for a lot of the physio type stuff, the pull downs, all that stuff that you just mentioned. But I'm like on my own workout, I've been taking it through like bro science 101, man. And I cannot believe, like, one, it doesn't make sense how much tension I can create there. I was doing a seated, so an upright seated, like how I am right now, chest press with it. So with both cables going, doing a chest press. I have a pretty good bench press. And I was doing sets of just 6. I was dying. Like it was awesome. Like it is an awesome tool for, I just can't get over how useful it's been. Single arm rows, like I've seen people do even marching, and we haven't gotten around that, but like doing like send it low and putting it around your hips and doing some marching or some like RDL type work. It's pretty awesome unit, man. I've been nothing but impressed, and I do nothing but praise its glories here. Once people figure out how to do that simple like hook and twist it on, which is so simple, but like you said, you're like in a week.
Yeah, it takes a couple tries and you got to get used to the field, but yeah, for sure. Well, that's awesome. Like that's a thrill for obviously me to hear, but yeah, you can do so much with it. And that's something we get commonly is that people will assume, oh, it doesn't have a lot of tension in terms of like where you can max it out, because what we'll put out there on in our basically the way we advertise it is we said, hey, it's, max is like 65 pounds of 1-to-1 tension, but a lot of people don't necessarily grasp what 1-to-1 tension really means, is that there's no pulley advantage. When you talk about those weight stacks, typically it's going to be on a 2-to-1 or 4-to-1 ratio. So, even though you see that number, that's not necessarily the weight or
Right,
the
because
force of work
the
you're
more
actually.
times it goes through a pulley, the easier it will be for it, right?
Exactly. Whereas our system, it's 1-to-1. So, you're putting that weight on there, that's what you're getting. And especially, I think, for how small it is, like you see how small it is, like, oh, it can't be much. And then you try to press it at max resistance, like you said. And like, being a strong individual, like it's still a good amount of load. Obviously, if you're doing hundreds of pounds of like a lat pull down or two arm, like, yeah, you know what I mean? That's where that big equipment, but then again, that equipment is thousands of dollars in like single function. Whereas this tool is meant to do 90% of all your other cable work, that still fits in your hands. And instead of thousands of dollars is, $650 a unit. Like that's, really for us, like the value is in
Right.
that whole encompassment.
And the amount of people that would walk into this gym that would require hundreds of pounds for a lat row is minimal at best.
Yeah.
And I could handle quite a bit on a lat row or a bench press. However, by just slowing down my movement, I can make that lightweight feel very, like, you can make lightweight feel heavy. Anybody who's listening who's pretty strong knows this kind of stuff. It's funny. It's like the people who aren't really, into this, they think that it's like all about the weight, but it's more like how you move it and the tempo of what you move. You can definitely exaggerate, and the ability to go range of motion, and loving it for the ability to kind of like train like an athlete with easy platform to, and easy to teach, using that platform to teach like any kind of rotational work or diagonal rotation, which is like, probably underused in most training, in my opinion. Like I think most people should train like an athlete, and that gets ignored, and it makes it simple. Like med ball throws in my new gym. Med ball throws is a great way to train, rotational. I can't do them in here. I'm gonna I could
Really?
but I'm
Okay.
fuck up all my nice paintings, and like we just don't have the concrete walls we used to have. So that can completely replace that. And then in group training, just by having two of those, we can make that into one station. We can, there's good ways to get around it where we can make, not buying one for every single rack, work. I mean, if you can afford for every rack, you should. It's not like they're crazy expensive. It's just that you're talking, 14 units might be a little bit more than the small gym budgets could afford.
Yeah, and that's for sure. Like going back to a couple of things, like one is on that rotational strength aspect and power. That's been huge for our units, and it's because the resistance mechanism in our unit that generates all of that tension, it's not dependent on gravity. So you can, whip that cable, you can move it at speed. It's never going to slack out. It's not like those weight plates that, and if you try to pull a weight stack really fast, that thing's going to slack, and those plates are going to bang around. But with our unit, it's always going to have tension on the cable, no matter how fast or slow, or you're doing isometric hold. So that range for athletes or anyone, like you said, is huge. And then for that, group training, that we've definitely seen an uptick in terms of the amount of different gyms and studios setting it up for small, mid-sized group training, because like you said, typically you're not going to have some type of cable movement programmed into any group function usually, because if you want to have, multiple cable machines in a space, usually it just doesn't make sense from a space, like you said, the value of the
Nobody would have that
footage. And then the cost too is that, each of those cable machines can be thousands of dollars. So
yeah, we're talking like us. Yeah. What is it? Like $800 for one unit or something? What is it?
For us,
roughly?
depending on the add-on. So it'll range between $650 to $750.
Right.
And
versus $5,000.
Yeah. Exactly.
minimal, honestly, minimal, right? For a cable machine, I would say of any kind of quality.
You got it. And that's been, the big thing. Like we even, set up like a facility package of 4 now, because we had so many players like, hey,
great idea.
4 is a good number for like small group training. Everyone has a station. It doesn't change.
Did you do that after you left my place?
No, that's been up for a little bit.
Why did I hear this?
But we're, we're, like we said, we don't even have an outbound beat the ground sales force. Everything's inbound in that too. And like for us, we're always trying to find fit. Maybe I missed an opportunity there to say some more units, Tony. Yeah. But no, we, like you said, like we try to cater to what people are interested in, and enlighten them, hey, like just showing people like, hey, this is what someone else is doing with the units. Whether it's in like that group style, whether it's the type of movements or the type of demographic they're working with, their training style. but you can adapt it almost anywhere doing, nearly any type of training. So
Right,
that's been
man.
the coolest part.
And like, so we talked about how it replaces that really expensive piece of equipment, which probably any gym owner in my like my kind of realm of gyms is probably saying, well, I would never have that anyway. But what most people do in my gym, and what we still do, is we use bands for a lot of these things that would be seen at typical Movati or Good Life
Yeah.
Gym or whatever, right? We lose bands, but we were finding like bands, it's almost like only like more advanced lifters are good at keeping tension through the whole movement with a band, right? Like a lot of people, they lose that focus, and the band, there's like, it's really loose or it's really tight. And obviously you can't really adjust it for each person. It's either a yellow band, green band, red band, right? They're pretty much all the same, no matter what, but you just get one that's more worn in and you got a little bit less tension. That's like kind of what you're looking for. But with your unit, and is there's the tension through the whole movement is similar or exact.
Yeah.
It feels like I cannot feel a difference in the tension of any part of the movement while I'm fully extended or whether I'm all the way back. Like that tension through those little cords, like for lack of a better description, it looks like paracord for anybody who's familiar. It's like similar to the ski, I guess the ski machine's cords. Like it has tension all the way through it, like consistent, which is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that cable always having tension, and ours, does have a slight progression in it, but it's so slight in comparison to like what you were saying, even like a band. Like it doesn't even compare at all, because like, that's what so many people, especially even, any of the rehab folks we work with, it's like trying to work in any of those movements. It's like you're doing an external rotation and it goes from no resistance to all of a sudden being like wicked tough. Like, that curve is so sharp of no resistance to like, okay, now it's really tough on a band, whereas you're not going to feel that on our unit at all. It's a much smoother resistance profile for sure.
Nice, man. So before we bore everybody with all this exercise stuff, we'll get into a little bit more of the story, which is fucking sweet. But I got to ask a question, because my one of my lifting partners, Marco, he wanted to take this thing apart, because I'm not the kind of guy who can explain the science behind how this thing works inside. He's like, I got to take this thing apart. I don't understand how it works. So it's like, it's a machine. It's not a machine. It's just like a little piece that goes on the rack. And then you take, which already has resistance when you pull on the cord, right?
Yep.
Then we take these little plates, and they look like hockey pucks, for lack of a better word, square hockey pucks. And you twist them on, and somehow that adds tension, but like, it's not like an actual physical weight that you're adding to it. And so what is happening inside of this mechanism that is causing it to weigh more? I could not explain
for sure.
it
We
to
always tell people not to take it apart, and it's not to, not find out what's going on inside, but it's like, hey, there's, that we have coils inside and there's a lot of energy in there. But so the way it works is it's a series of torque loaded spring mechanisms. So in that base unit, we have one of those torque loaded spring mechanisms. That one's rated for 5 pounds. So hence that base unit, if you don't add any of those additional resistance plates on it, that's going to give you that base 5 pounds. And then simply by interlocking those plates, as you see, they have a little like center shaft piece that will mate and interlock with basically that center shaft in the spool. And that individual plate has one of those coils in it as well. And so it essentially just makes it incrementally harder to turn that spool. Hence, like when you're pulling out that cord, and the more you add on, it just incrementally adds that tension. And then there's a special, shape to the spool to allow that cable to like slide nicely. So you do get a very smooth feeling resistance on every pull. But yeah, it's, it's simple from that sense, but obviously there's certainly some intricacies on the inside. But the easiest way to say it's like a series of those torque loaded clock looking coils on the inside of each of those mechanisms. And to your point too, the last thing, like that resistance plate, that little, what you said, that hockey puck style piece that you add on, it'll add 10 pounds, but it's only going to weigh 1 pound. Right.
Yeah,
and then we can
also kind of like, you're like, this doesn't make sense. I just put on 2 of these things that says 20 pounds, but I feel like I'm lifting 60 pounds extra.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's definitely a man unique and an amazing invention, which I want to get into that part, because I love the story behind this thing. So Isaac and I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona, to paint the picture for you guys. And I'm doing like a little speaking gig for the Business of Strength. My guys, shout out to Dan and Joe from Varsity House. Supporting us, and I know supporting you now, Isaac, for a long time. And they're having a little shindig for all the people who are involved with presenting, and the people who are going to have booths, essentially, is what we had. Some vendors there, for lack of a better description. So Isaac walks in, but just before he gets there, of course, the Americans are like, they're all like, "Oh, you're from Canada. Do you know Joe from Toronto?" Like, they're like, they think like Canada is so small, and we are not huge. We are massive though. Like, we're massive in size. We
Yeah.
don't have many people, but still, I don't know Joe from Toronto, man. Like, and I'm like teasing them like why they think this, like, right? And then you walk in and your shirt says, what is it? Almost Detroit?
It was Detroitish. I had a Detroitish shirt on.
So I see this dude and they don't know anything. They don't know where you're from, right? They assume that you're American. And you walk in, I'm like, what's with this shirt? I gotta know. And I'm thinking you're gonna say from Auburn Hills or
Yeah.
something like that, Monroe. And you're like, well, I'm actually from Canada. And I'm like, where? You're like, from Windsor. I'm like, what? And then now these Americans are like, see, you know everybody. You guys all know each other. So it's hilarious to see that you were from Windsor, because they had been talking about that I was gonna love this thing that you were bringing, right? They're like, you got to see this, and then it's hilarious that you end up being from Windsor. So how does this company come about? Like, take me through that, because it's a sweet story.
Yeah, for sure. No, definitely that was a good run in for sure. But yeah, to kind of take it back, obviously, grew up in Windsor, and then I left Windsor for college. Obviously growing up, like, hockey was big, baseball was big, and I always wanted to go play sports in the States. And so that's what brought me to the US for college. When I was over there playing baseball, my junior year, I had a really bad injury, go for a fly ball, dislocated my shoulder, and needed labor repair, reconstructive surgery. So for me, trying to make a comeback, the biggest thing was, well, I started using the cable machine a lot, and I always use cables, being, an athlete, being in the gym, you know the equipment, but really never used them that much. And so after I had my surgery, and after I had some mobility back, and it was kind of getting into more, let's build some strength with the athletic trainer. I just got so used to using those machines, and it was because they were easier on my joints. You could dial the resistance up and down, no problem. You could work in so many different planes on a cable machine. So it's like, wow, like, there's just so many benefits. Like, this is great. And then the observation came, well, if it's so great, why is there only one good cable machine in the varsity weight room? And well, it's because they're massive. They take up a lot of space. They're heavy, bulky, and they're really expensive, commercial piece of equipment. So that was kind of, where that initial idea came of, like, well, it'd be really great if, like, you could create a good feeling resistance that was smooth, always had tension, but was just more, and the word I kind of thought was like more accessible, meaning like, smaller, you could fit in a smaller space. It was more affordable, adaptable, kind of that accessibility really like encompass that. And so I kind of had that idea for a bit. Briefly went over, had a little baseball stint in Europe, which is fun. Came back to a grad school program, which is what brought me to Boston. And so this grad program that I was in was this like kind of more business entrepreneurship program. And one of the things we had to do was pitch a business idea. So I obviously had this idea lingering from a couple years prior, and was like, well, that's the only idea I have that I think would be like super killer. Like, people would want this, people would pay for this. It solves a problem for myself, but I was like, I really believe there's a lot of others who, just would benefit from a more accessible cable option. And so I met a classmate, Nathaniel, who's the co-founder of the business. So the two of us ended up starting it, but he also had the same shoulder injury from a mountain bike accident. He was a little more on the extreme sports side, but also he's a mechanical engineer, and not just a guy who can like do design work or CAD work. Like, he's good with his hand. He can be a mechanic. He like knows materials and parts, and just a brilliant mechanically minded guy. So he was like, hey, I might have an idea of how it works. And he's the one who has credit of coming up with that, that mechanism that obviously we had filed a patent on in the early days of that series of torque loaded spring mechanisms to generate the tension. But he kind of had that idea. He was from the Boston area too, so he had a buddy down the road from the school who had an auto shop, and he had a 3D printer at the auto shop. So he let us borrow the 3D printer to build the first unit. And the first one we built probably had 2 feet of cable out of it. You couldn't adjust the resistance. And I think the mount we used, because we didn't know, we're like, how do we attach it? We used like a heavy duty suction cup that was designed for like luxury car, like roof racks. for people who didn't want to put like rails on a luxury car. So it's like wicked strong, but we'd like suction cup it up to like a drywall. And like looking back, obviously we killed that idea pretty early, but in terms of the mount, but it gave us the access to actually think about, okay, like this would work. And it was so primitive, but it got us excited. So then we both left that program and said, hey, like, how can we refine it? What are the things that people want? People want the resistance to be adjustable. We got to figure out, okay, how are people going to mount it? And that's where we're like, well, could we make it modular where there's like different mount options? Because we didn't really know exactly how people would adapt it. And so the two of us set up shop. His dad and mom, his parents were kind enough to lend their garage to us. And we set up shop in his dad's garage there just outside of Boston and started building them. You know, we chipped in a few $1,000s each to get a really good quality 3D printer of our own. So we could kind of build the early, you know, prototype rounds and get them out there. And 3D print technology now is so good that you can 3D print like with, you know, the good materials and it's fully usable. So we had people, you know, cranking on the products, like you were able to print it. But the problem was printing one unit takes like on a single print takes like 2.5 days. It's like, so it's not scalable. So you can make a really good model, but you know, if you're trying to, you know, scale it, it doesn't exactly work that way. But literally in the garage is where we like fine-tuned it, bringing it to coaches and trainers in the area and seeing how it would work. And then really from there, we figured out, you know, a lot of our manufacturing from just like the connections I had from Windsor, just being in Windsor, Detroit with the auto industry, you know, having family members and friends in all the tool and die, auto shops, machine shops. They kind of gave us the crash course on, you know, how to change some of the design to make it more manufacturable, you know, which molds to use, you know, which shops to use, things like that. And so like that was literally the unlock of having Nathaniel's kind of expertise in the garage from an engineering standpoint, having the help and some of the connections of guiding it into like being able to manufacture it. And the two of us, you know, started just building them in the garage, and word of mouth just started growing of like, oh, one coach would have it and be like, oh, this is really cool. And the people gravitated to it were like a lot of the strength conditioning performance world where like they wanted the next best tool, the latest tool, the edge.
Right.
And so they were, you know, drawn to it. And then we had one of our early customers, he was doing this consulting call for the New Jersey Devils on some specific training technique, completely unrelated to us. And I guess at the end of the call, he just like asked him, he's like, hey guys, you ever see Ancore? And this was, you know, pretty early, it's probably, you know, 5 years ago now. And they're like, no, what's that? And he started just, I guess, demoing it over Zoom. And so right away, New Jersey Devils contacted us wanting the product. The players then wanted it for the home gym. And then once they had it, then the guys at the Rangers found out, and the Penguins found out, and the Coyotes found out. And so like right away, we're still in the garage and, you know, we're shipping these units to NHL teams. And some of them at the time were, you know, were 3D print models still, even in the very early days, but, you know, they held up greatest products. So that's when, you know, we kind of had all that manufacturing in motion where we were getting all the raw components into the garage and just building them ourselves. We had a couple other, you know, younger college guys come in who were handy, helping us build as things started to mount up. You know, I was doing kind of all the front end, Nathaniel was doing on the back end. And then we had our first kind of real employee team member was, you know, our director of marketing today, Mike, he was a classmate of ours from grad school. He was helping out just like, hey, set up a website, set up basically everything, you know, where someone could find us, but we have no budget. So,
This
you know
is
what
crazy.
I mean? Do your best.
You're like in your garage and all of a sudden you're getting a call from the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And obviously, you know, we didn't tell, hey, we're in the garage here.
Yeah.
You know, we just wanted to,
we'll see if we can get those off the presses. We got a big order going out tomorrow. See if we can fit you in.
Exactly. You like, got it.
Everybody. Yeah, you're telling
you just shove in the back.
I feel like you're on your phone and you're like, shh. That's like,
yeah,
you know,
that's pretty much what it was. You know what I mean? Like I'm having these conversations on the phone and I just look over and it's like, you know, a few college guys just like building parts with hand tools
it's
in
amazing.
the garage.
It's just an incredible story. And now you've got them like, and how far has this grown? Like how far has your reach gone in the
so
world? And what are you allowed to say? I don't know what you're allowed to say.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like since the garage, like it got to a point where like, you know, we would have shipments come in and they would be like, hey, we want to make sure they would call to make sure like we had a forklift to unload the truck. And it was like, we're at this, we're in this residential neighborhood and we're like, no, we're going to need a lift gate. So there's a lot of, funny stories like that and trying to, get stuff off trucks into the garage. And at that point, the neighborhood wasn't zoned for manufacturing. So we had, grown to the point where we needed to move into another, industrial space. And now we're in our third location today. We still do all the assembly build in house. That's something we've been committed to. But now there's, hundreds of NCAA colleges have our stuff. We have now our products mandated in the NHL, which is the coolest thing, that so many of those NHL teams had purchased it. And for them, it was a travel piece in their kit, because they have great gyms at the practice facilities, but on the road, they don't have access to cables at all. And they just never have. So
is there a primary use that like the NHL, like I understand with quarterbacks, with pitchers, we're talking rotator cuff work, which like that's something we barely even touched on, the value in a rehab clinic, because rehab clinics are generally smaller. But like, so I see the value there. Like I can see like the baseball players, like my sons, I have them doing it all the time now. All the internal, external, all that stuff. Right. What in the NHL, do you know what the primary?
Yeah, a lot of it, they still really program a lot around the rotational power.
Right. Rotational power, I guess, right?
Like,
slap shots and like.
Right. That's where they're really, programming in, because a lot of the NHL teams are used to the Kaiser pneumatic cable machines, that are great machines, but they're $5,000-$6,000 a piece, right? And they're not portable, and you need to plug them in and have an air compressor. So for us, it was kind of that, like this was almost like a portable version of what they would program on those machines at their home facility. So it was so widespread in the league that with the support of the coaches, they went to the league and actually requested that it become mandated at all 32 arenas. So like that was really cool. We've got that framed up in our HQ wall now, the letter from the executive president of the NHL, sending out the league memo that, hey, it's a rule now in like exhibit 36 of the collective bargaining agreement that every arena has to have this available for the players. And having our brand on there was pretty cool. And so those things grew, and then the baseball world has grown a ton too. The majority of MLB teams, are customers as well. And for them, it's interesting too, because, there's just so many minor league teams in baseball, right? Under the MLB team. So for those teams too, it's, and there's 5 teams at least under every organization. So there's just a lot of opportunities there where the minor leagues don't necessarily have the best setups either. These are an easy product where it's not a super high price point and it's portable, so they can get such a variety of use. It's not like a single use, single function machine. So it just, has much more return for them. But yeah, so much of it was, word of mouth across the board. And as in certain realms of the coaching world, everyone kind of sees what everyone else is doing. And with social media as well, when coach posts a tool, people go, hey, what's that? That was so much of how we grew. People just being like, what is that? What is that? And then like the PGA Tour picked it up. So we're on all of the PGA performance trailers, basically these big 18-wheelers that go to every single PGA event. We've mounted we have these wall mounts, 6-foot sliding rails on the walls of all the trailers to give all the golfers, access to the cables, because once again, rotational athlete, right? They love doing any of that work on our machines because it's just so catered to doing anything in that rotational plane. So it's been, incredible, right? As a small business, and for us too, we're still Nathaniel and I are the owners of the company, and that there's no outside investors or VCs. Everything's been bootstrapped and sweat equity to make it happen and go one step to the next. And part of that was in the early days, even when we launched out of the grad school, like it was not a product or even idea that like the professors thought was good. Like it was like hey, that's a terrible idea. Like you shouldn't do it. Like that was the feedback. It wasn't like, hey, this is awesome. At least when we were, of course, in that academic setting, it's different than, when we kind of brought it to some of the more industry focused, definitely in performance. So for us, it wasn't like, hey, there were people out of the gate that wanted to be involved or invest. Obviously, that's changed now as we've been able to build, success around it in terms of the different organizations we've worked with and our customer base. But for us, we're still a word of mouth growing company, and really put a focus on building and assembling all the products in house still. And go from, 2 guys in the garage to, a full-time team of 18 now, as a part of the Anchor crew.
It's
So
just
yeah,
awesome,
it's
man.
been, it's
It's just
been,
awesome.
definitely a crazy journey, but, for us, big emphasis on still having, engineers on staff to build new stuff. And, we got to keep innovating and make the product better and make adaptations to, continue to try to, lead the charge in the now, I think it's like a category of like portable and like compact cable units and rack attachments like that, or have now become definitely a thing,
Yeah, you do
that
see
we've noticed.
different things coming through
Yeah.
and my phone's close enough to me where I'm sure I'll get some kind of different product trying to be sold to me. And it was wild too, because we're at that conference with, I don't know if there's 30 something people, owners of gyms for the most part, or people who work integral positions at their gym that they work at. And Elite FTS is the booth next to you guys, which is like, they're like, oh geez, of strength training. Like they're like, and it was like everybody was like, not this is not a diss on them. It was just everybody was so just intrigued by what you were doing. Like, because we were doing cable rotational work with your thing attached to a freaking chair. Somebody's sitting in
Yeah.
the chair so the chair wouldn't
Yeah.
take off. But it was like, I'm like, oh, this is wild. My idea that you guys, and I want royalties if this works. Some kind of like med ball attachment to that. So like my sons were doing rotational work for baseball, so that they could sit, like, have you seen the drill? It's a great drill, like, so that they're, baseball, obviously. So they're loading their leg, right? A lot of kids don't load their leg, so that when they go to stand up, like we're coming from a box and they rotate through, right? With that,
Okay.
easier for like to train
Just
people
holding
with
the
like
ball. Okay.
holding a ball rather than a small tool, I guess, because it forces them to kind of engage their lats and everything. I think that would be awesome.
Okay.
A med ball
Yeah,
attachment.
we're looking to, making more attachments is just a great way. It just creates more different ways that you can use the product. And for us, like, it's an open store system, meaning like it's just a universal carabiner that is on the end of the cable.
Right,
So
like
you can
almost
attach,
everything.
what I
Most
mean?
gyms have this stuff, like a lot of this stuff
And-
here already. Like for me, I already had like a bunch of handles and stuff off of,
Yeah.
and it was a lot of this I'm already using, which is awesome. Like that, I think is great too,
Yeah.
because it's just,
Well, maybe we'll have to, stay tuned. Maybe that'll be an ad on there for
There
sure.
we go. There we go. I want a little garage gym sticker on it then. The garage gym med ball.
We can get some flair in there for sure.
Yeah. All right. I'll be down with that. I think like what's really cool and listening to your story, and I think it's so important as a business. Like I know like every time I meet with any marketing guy or anything, they're like, you got to tell your story. It's not your product, it's your story. And I think you guys are very similar. Like I think getting this story out there, like your product's unreal, man. It's amazing. But I think people listening to you and hearing like the owner, the co-founder, like talk with the passion, like you can just see it. They can hear it in your voice. I can see it in your eyes while we're sitting here on the Zoom.
Yeah.
But how like awesome this is, and that like just makes it you want to buy it and invest in like companies like yours even more so, right? Versus should any of these other people match what you're putting out, which I don't think they will. They don't currently, that's for sure. That I think that's awesome. Just keep telling that story, man, because it's unreal. And listening to you say it, like you can feel the vibe right through the screen, which is sick.
Thank you. Well, no, I appreciate that, because for us, like being so focused on, what's ahead and what's next, and you're trying to keep on things that you very easily, I think, forget, some of the background and just, what's happened. And like one thing in our HQ here down our whole office hallway, we're glad we took a bunch of pictures in kind of the garage days and early on.
Yeah.
And like, it's just the whole wall is just flooded with framed pictures of just like kind of the story from like the early, what it was in the garage all the way through, sprinkled in with a bunch of different, pictures of different customers and the places that our product is now. Cause it's wild for us to think like when we were even in the garage, and it's like, we had, MMA coach Eric Nix, like this is while we were still in the garage. He just like texted us a photo of like Francis Nagano using it. He's just like, here, man. Like, and that was it. And it's like, wow, like, we couldn't even afford if, we had to like pay for a picture, like, but he just sent it because, he liked the product. Obviously we, we're always trying to be friendly and supportive, and, the customer service was big where, any product's going to have issues. Like if someone tries to sell you fitness equipment and tell you there will never ever be a problem with this, like that's just not true. Like things are going to wear and tear, and we've made improvements over time. And that's where if someone reaches out with an issue, like we got to just jump on it and take care. And since the early days, that's definitely paid us back in the long run. in terms
Yeah,
of
for
just
sure,
trying to
man.
always maintain relationships and the trust. And yeah, it's wild to think, I mean, from the garage, you go to the MMA fighters to, Alabama football, Michigan football,
That's
like, some
crazy.
of these visits and people we've been able to meet and work with, and just to see them actually use the product. And it's just like
And then
in the
go out there
program
and
and be
kick
like,
some
wow,
ass in their
it's
sport, right?
incredible. So
Yeah, man. I
it's been
remember
really
I'm training
awesome.
in my when we were in our one car garage when we first started, and I tell my wife, like, and she's inside with two baby. She's like, I think she maybe one baby, and she's pregnant, right? Like in her house coat. And I go in my garage, my one car garage, to meet a client that morning, and she comes out. She's like, "Oh, that girl was pretty fit. Like, what does she do?" I'm like, "Well, remember last 2 weeks ago we watched the UFC? That's Randa Marcos. Like, she's fighting in the UFC." And I'm like, "How the hell did this person end up in my one car garage?
Yeah,
Why would they like?" And that's kind of like those, those things. And my wife's like, sitting there holding the baby, and she's like, and like to now think back to like 10 years where we
yeah.
are from that moment, and it was like kind of those surreal moments. I
How
love,
crazy it thinks to look back at, like,
yeah.
why
Was it?
that was happening and
Are
how
you
it did.
familiar with the
But
book Outliers? Like, was it
yep,
Malcolm Gladwell?
yep,
So
Malcolm Gladwell.
but when
Yep.
you're talking, like that's what you're thinking. Like to me, that's what's going through my head. Even just how you and I met, it's kind of like funny stuff like that. But like way bigger scale is you with
Hmm.
the Anchor, right? And meeting your partner, and then this, like, he happens to be mechanically inclined,
Yeah.
and you see this need, and like how many things could have happened if you would have been put in, like, I'm assuming there was probably more than one class at that school. Like if you would have been put in a different,
Yeah.
semester 2, you
It
took that class, like none of this happens. Like,
it
you're back here,
so
you're
hard.
working at Valiant Tool or something, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, pretty
Yeah,
crazy.
for sure. Because
And
before,
not that there's
I
anything
was
wrong with that. Just your life is way different. You're not living in
a
Boston. You're not doing this, right? You're not,
100%. It
yeah.
gives you chills, but it's like, I mean, you mean, for us, it's like being thankful for it. You mean, you're humbled by it, of these little moments that, like you said, can completely tip the scale. Yeah, so many of them. And it's weird to think like all the things that fell in place, like you said, like with Nathaniel being the mechanical engineer, and then even, being tied back to Windsor and Detroit with some of the manufacturing
Yeah.
connections that,
Yeah.
and family friends that we had that were like just willing to help out and provide their experience, expertise, working in the industry for decades. That, oh, here's what you do, here's where you go, and it was amazing. When you
You
look
got a
back at
little
it,
bit
it's
of
like,
that
how does it
Yankee
all work?
accent now, though, and you know that,
Yeah.
right? You know that you got a little bit of that Yankee accent.
I got to be careful, get that Boston accent. You got to be, they got that up here. I actually, yeah, I caught myself about 10 minutes ago. I used the word wicked. Now I use the word wicked. I got to be
Wicked.
careful. That's a big word out here.
Oh man, I gotta definitely plan a trip down there. We just had some friends up in Boston too. I should have. I never even thought to ask you for some recommendations, but
Yeah, for sure.
do you
You're
actually
more than
get out, or
welcome.
you spend every minute in this shop? I feel like you're one of
Well,
those guys.
definitely, yeah, but I live and breathe Anchor because it is my life, and you embrace it. And at this point of where I'm at, like, if you have a significant other and she's supportive and she understands it, and so
It's about
that's
a girl. What is
important
that?
part is the
Goodwill Hunting,
relationship.
right?
You know
It's
what I
about a
mean?
girl.
If you keep the things that are important, the family and the relationships, and make sure those are not neglected. And other than that, for me, it's a pretty straight focus on what we built here. And now it's different too than just two of us in the garage. It's like, hey, we got 18 people and there's livelihoods, and this is full-time work, and the customers then that are paying with their hard-earned dollars, right? And they're investing in our equipment to elevate either their training or their clients training. And so, like, I mean, there's definitely, I think, that added level of responsibility that just, we enjoy what we do,
I
and
love
I
hearing that
certainly love it.
because
So that's what keeps me going. And it's a ton of work, right? But with it is, at the end of the day, I was like, I wouldn't want to do something else,
I
right?
love hearing
I
that, man.
wouldn't want
Like,
to do something
taking
else.
care of your employees. And I think we all think that way. Any good boss does, any good leader or owner thinks that way. But I love how you took that another couple of layers. Like that is, that's hard-earned money that I could be putting into my kids' baseball team. That's hard-earned money that I could be, like, when we as
Yeah,
small business owners buying your product. Like, I am not the New Jersey Devils. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like, so understand that you guys actually appreciate that behind it and the quality that you're putting out in terms of, like, hey, like, the New Jersey Devils, would they continue to buy off you if they broke? Probably not, but they could afford to, is what I'm saying. Like, some of us, like, something goes wrong, man. I'm like, I can't just replace that part. Like, it's important to me that you are very concerned with that quality. And I love that you're, use some local ties to do it. That makes me pumped.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not, like I said, we're not going to be perfect, but we're going to strive to do everything we can. And that's part of us too, trying to emphasize like the relational aspect and also the support aspect too. So one of the things we've been doing since the garage days is I used to do every single one, but every order that would come in, I would handwritten note, like with the customer's name and pen of like, thanks so much. Like, let me know if you need anything. And now our support team still does that. So every order comes out with the client's name, as long as they put it on their order, it's going to have their name on it and with a note, and also with one member of our customer support, their cell phone number and personal email, so that if you ever need anything, you've got a human right there that you can just go to if there's any problem. We've really emphasized keeping that, even though, we've grown, we've figured out ways that, hey, it's still worth it, to spend the time to have someone, write those notes and have that in every box. And, it probably goes out to, 90% of the orders. There's certain ones that we have partners where we don't know where it's going if they buy a product, but everything else, like 90+% is going to have that handwritten note, which is something, we've been proud to maintain. And we've just felt it's like super important. And I think just really a reflection of what we want our brand to be.
Awesome, man. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on here today. I think like your story is motivational. I think your perseverance to continue and your, like, I guess your MacGyver like skills to make this happen, like, to find the workarounds and everything has just been, it's unreal, man. I'm super proud of you. Glad to call you a friend, and I'm happy that I get the Isaac card in my box. I get to call you when I got any issues. So anybody you're looking to find him, we already mentioned at the start. We'll have it in the show notes. Anything else you want to say if anybody's looking to to purchase, to find out more, whatever it is, throw it out there now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, for us, finding us, Anchor. So ancoretraining.com, ANCORE training.com. And then otherwise too, you can, I'll give my direct too, isaac.lewis@ancoretraining.com. That's my email. So, people can get in touch, but no, for us as, a small business, the biggest thing is, we're trying to get the word out there, but, we're really obviously, a huge proponent of backing our products and making sure that, hey, we find people who are the right fit. So that's where, you reach out to us. We're happy to talk people through, anyone who's interested, but that's the best way to find us at, our website. And, Tony, thanks so much for having me. Absolute thrilled to glad we were able to make this connection, when we did, and to be able to chat with another, fellow Windsorite. That's always a huge treat. Always, not always, super often that I'm going to run into someone on the road who's born and bred from Windsor. So
yeah, man, 519. Wicked.
There you go.
Wicked. And looking forward to having you down for another workout. Hopefully, if you're making it down for Easter or any of the holidays coming.
Sounds good. The last workout was great. That was
awesome having you in there like a couple of days that week too, getting you out of the house.
Exactly.
Borrowing mom and dad's car. Hey, boy.
Yeah, exactly. You got to scoot back. So anywho, well, Tony, thanks again. Really appreciate it. And thanks so much for the support.
Thank you. And I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. I know you will. Please follow all those things they tell you to do. And that would help us to grow our mission of helping others to do more and be more through introducing people like Isaac and motivational stories like that to your lives. So have a great week, everybody. We're over and out.
Now's the time to do more and be more.